$214. That was all of it. Every dollar you'd managed to separate from rent, from groceries, from the credit card you were still paying down from a move 2 years earlier. You had set up an automatic transfer for $65 a month, and somehow, after 3 months, it had become $214. You checked the account twice because the number felt too clean to be real. You were 23, and you did not know what compound interest would do with that, and you did not know anything, really. You just knew your father had mentioned once that he didn't have anything like that set aside. The way he said it, flat, no inflection, the way you described weather, told you everything about how normal that was in the house you came from. Your father's name was Marcus, and he worked nights at a distribution warehouse outside the city. He had a knee brace he'd bought at a drugstore because the real one from the orthopedist was $400, and that was, he said, a car payment. He wore it under his work pants, and you'd seen it exactly once, hanging on the bathroom doorknob on a Saturday morning when he was sleeping. You did not say anything about it then, and you have not said anything about it since. That is the house retirement lived in when you were growing up, not as a plan, not as a number you worked toward. Retirement was the thing that happened to people on television, or to the fathers of kids in neighborhoods you drove through but did not live in. In your house, you worked until something stopped you. A body, a layoff, a company that decided it no longer needed whatever you had given it for 26 years. You didn't know at 23 that you were already doing something radical because the $65 felt like nothing. It felt like an embarrassment, actually. Some small gesture toward a future that seemed so far away it might as well be fictional. But you kept it running, you didn't touch it, and somewhere in the compounding arithmetic of consistent behavior and patient markets, that embarrassment began to quietly grow. Compound interest is patient, and it waits for the people who learned to wait. You had learned to wait from watching people who had no choice. At 24, you got a salaried job. Not a great one. $61,000 a year in a city where a one-bedroom could take half of that before you ever bought a bag of groceries. But it came with a 401k, and the HR paperwork was 22 pages long, written in a language that felt specifically designed to make you feel stupid. You read it 3 times, and you contributed 4% because that was what the form suggested, and you didn't know enough to know you should have asked someone smarter than a suggestion box. Your first contribution was $87 per paycheck. $87 every 2 weeks, going somewhere you couldn't see, into an account you didn't fully understand, matched to some percentage by a company you were still figuring out whether to trust. It felt theatrical, like a ritual you were performing because someone told you it was important, not because you understood what it would become. But $87 wasn't a number, and it wasn't a number at all. It was a direction. And the direction was the only thing that mattered. The person who changed everything was not a financial advisor, not a mentor, not a podcast you found at the right moment. His name was Ray, and he was a coworker, 31 years old, unremarkable in most ways, and he kept a tattered investing book in his messenger bag that he never seemed to actually read. One afternoon at lunch, he mentioned, between bites of a sandwich, that he had maxed out his Roth IRA for the year. He said it the way you might mention the weather, casually, the way you mention something that is simply true about your life. You did not know what maxing out a Roth IRA meant, so you nodded, went home that night, and looked it up. You found a number. You found a limit. You found a structure that had been available to you your entire working life, and that no one in your house had ever mentioned. Not because they were hiding it, but because it genuinely had not existed in the world they moved through. You opened one the following week, and the contribution limit for a Roth IRA ran $7,500 annually for someone your age. That felt like a lot, and it was a lot. And you didn't max it that first year or the second, but you put something in and you automated it. You treated it like a bill that had to be paid to someone you owed a future to. What changed wasn't the account, because accounts are just containers. And what changed was the accumulation of small, automated decisions you made once and then did not have to make again. You stopped thinking about whether to invest and started thinking about how much. And that is a different conversation, a quieter one that has a different kind of ending. Your sister Denise did not have that conversation. Denise was 4 years older, and she worked as a school administrator. Hard work, genuine work, the kind of work that a community depends on and does not pay accordingly. She had 2 kids, a car with 140,000 miles on it, and a credit card balance that hovered around $11,000 the way bad weather hovers. She was not reckless, and she was never reckless, and she was simply on a track that no one had designed for her, and that she had never been handed the tools to change. You never talked to Denise about the Roth IRA, and you told yourself it was because she had enough to worry about. But the honest answer was that you didn't know how to say, I think I found a door, and I think you're standing on the wrong side of it. So you didn't save it, and you kept contributing, and you increased the amount every time you got a raise. Not all of it, but half. Half went into accounts, and the other half went into the life you were building. And you bought groceries that weren't on sale and paid for things without calculating for 3 days beforehand. These feel like small freedoms, but they are not small. And they are the entire point. By 30, you had more in retirement accounts than your father had saved in his entire working life. You did not say that out loud to anyone, and it sat in you like a stone, heavy and private and complicated. Because Marcus was not failing, and he had worked every shift they gave him, and he had not been lazy or careless or bad with money. He had been inside a system that was not built to let people like him accumulate anything, quietly, over time, with patience and automation and index funds that tracked 500 of the largest companies in the country. He just didn't know the door was there. The first person who changes a family's relationship with money is never thanked for it in real time. You were 32 when the markets that had been soft for 18 months turned upward sharply, and the account that had grown from $214 to something much larger moved in a week the way it used to move in a year. You watched this happen from a phone screen on your lunch break, and then put the phone in your pocket and ate your sandwich. That was the moment you understood, for the first time, what long-term investing actually meant. Not the idea of it, but the feeling of it. The way it separates you from urgency, the way time becomes an asset you already have. You are 48 years old, and you made the last check, and you ran the numbers with the kind of patience that only exists on the other side of 23 years of not touching things. The portfolio had grown from consistent contributions and a stock market that had returned over the long arc of your investing life, something close to 10% annually on average. With the understanding that no year was average, that some years it punished you and some years it astonished you, and both of those years required exactly the same behavior from you, which was nothing. The portfolio had crossed a number you had set in your head at 34 as the number, and it wasn't a flashy number. It was a real number. The kind that, at something like 4% withdrawn annually, would produce enough to live on without depleting what was there. The kind of number that your grandfather, who worked a factory floor for 31 years and died with $43 and some change in a coffee can behind the flour in the pantry, could not have imagined as something belonging to people from your family. You did not throw a party, and you called your mother on a Tuesday, a regular Tuesday, a Tuesday that for the first time in your adult life, you had not had to clear with anyone. She asked if you were at work, and you paused. Not for a long time, just long enough to register what the question meant now. And you said, "Not today." She said, "Are you feeling okay?" And you said you were fine, and she moved on to other things, and you talked about the weather. You talked about whether Denise's car was going to make it through the winter, and about something Marcus had said that had been funny, and you laughed at the right parts. You did not say, "Mom, I think I just finished something that our family has been trying to finish for 3 generations. You hung up and sat in the quiet. And there is a specific sound to freedom when it finally arrives. And it doesn't sound like anything you imagined. It doesn't sound like celebration. And it sounds like a Tuesday afternoon with no particular obligation. And the strange, slightly untethered feeling of having nowhere you are required to be. He retired at 48, and his dad still clocks in at 61. That sentence is not a judgment. And let it be clear that it is not a judgment. Because Marcus made it work for 30 years with a bad knee and a night shift and children who needed things. He found a way to provide. What you did was not better than that. It was just different. And it was the result of a small, automated decision at 23 and a coworker named Ray who mentioned a Roth IRA like it was the weather. And a market that was patient with you because you were patient with it. And 22 years of not being distracted by urgency. You drive past Marcus's building sometimes. Not on purpose, because it is on the way to somewhere you go, and the parking lot is mostly full at 11 at night. You slow down when you pass it, and you don't stop, and you think about the knee brace on the bathroom door. Most people don't retire because they plan to stop, and they stop because they run out of body. You planned to stop, and there is guilt in that. Not crushing guilt, but a quiet, permanent awareness that you changed a direction by understanding something that your family did not have access to. And the changing of that direction came with a kind of solitude that no one warns you about. You cannot fully share what you built with the people who watched you build it, because they don't have the context, and giving them the context feels like drawing a line that you don't want to draw. So you hold the Roth IRA in silence, and you hold the account balance in silence, and you hold the coffee can in silence. The account balance is a number, and the freedom is a different thing entirely. Grandma Evelyn never once had a bank account in her own name until she was 53, and she kept everything in that coffee can. Emergency money, school money, money for the thing that breaks on a Sunday when the hardware store is closed. $43 and some quarters when she passed it down. She didn't pass down numbers, and she passed down behavior. The behavior of protecting what little there was, of not spending what you couldn't replace, of keeping something set aside because the world is unreliable and you need a buffer between yourself and it. You did the same thing, and you just had different containers. Because an index fund is a coffee can with better math. $214. And you look at that number sometimes, not the portfolio total, not the withdrawal number, not the retirement balance that crossed a threshold. The first number, the embarrassing one, the one that felt like nothing, sitting in a savings account at 23 while you were still paying down a credit card, that number became something. Not because of any single decision, not because of any month when you suddenly got it right, but because of 22 years of doing the next small thing. $87 per paycheck, automated contributions, accounts opened and left alone, and markets trusted. Not because they deserved blind trust, but because the alternative had an ending you'd already watched.
You didn't read about that ending in a book, and you saw it on a knee brace, hanging on a bathroom door on a Saturday morning, on a man who never ran out of effort. Just time.
The door was always there, and you were just the first one to walk through it.